All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing a deep dive on an asset with a 16,000-year track record, one that fueled ancient civilizations, something pharaohs literally demanded for the afterlife. But if you look at the modern portfolio of global agriculture, it's been deliberately downgraded, suppressed, and even targeted for elimination. This is the case of chufa.
And this quote, this really gets to the core of it. We're not talking about a plant that's just naturally a nuisance. We're talking about a plant that became a problem for a very specific and very profitable business model. Think about that. An entire industry built not on growing something, but on destroying it.
So here's the paradox, right? It's just stunning. On one side, you have this incredible history, a foundational food, a pillar of ancient life. And on the other side, you have official agricultural bodies calling it a menace, one of the world's worst weeds. How does an asset get its reputation so catastrophically wrecked? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
To really understand the value here, you have to look at the long game. This isn't some new fad. This is a blue-chip asset with a performance record that goes all the way back to the Ice Age.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's wild. We have evidence people were gathering this 16,000 years ago. That's thousands of years before farming as we know it even started. By 5000 BCE, it's a staple crop in Egypt, right up there with wheat and barley. It was so valuable, so essential, they packed it into tombs for the journey into the afterlife. That shows you a deep, long-term belief in its fundamental worth.
And this is its strategic advantage. This isn't just food. It's a food security technology. The ability to just dry these little tubers and store them for years with no refrigeration, no preservatives, is an incredible feature. It's basically a built-in insurance policy against famine or drought. Modern crops just don't have that kind of resilience.
Okay, so the history is rock solid. Now let's do a fundamental analysis. Let's look at the nutritional portfolio. What is this thing actually made of?
This side-by-side with wheat is so revealing. Now, wheat's got a bit more protein, sure, but, and this is a big but, chufa's protein is complete, meaning it has all the essential amino acids. But the real game changer is that last row, required inputs. Chufa needs, well, nothing. No fertilizers, no pesticides. It's a self-sufficient system. Wheat, on the other hand, is a high-dependency model.
And when you break down its composition, the portfolio just gets more and more impressive. It's loaded with oleic acid. That's the same healthy fat you find in olive oil. It's packed with something called resistant starch, which is fantastic for your gut. You've got the complete protein, tons of fiber, key minerals. It's a nutritional powerhouse, plain and simple.
And then there's the yield. You know, how much can you actually get? Well, get this. In Spain, they can pull up to 6 tons per acre. Now, to put that in perspective, the average U.S. wheat yield is about 3 tons an acre, and that's with a ton of chemical and mechanical help. Chufa is delivering double the output with 0 inputs. The numbers just don't lie.
So, if the history is solid, the fundamentals are strong, why the downgrade? This is where we get to the hostile takeover, the deliberate business decision to rebrand this superfood as a common weed.
To understand the motive, you have to understand the market it was up against, monoculture. And this system isn't just about growing one crop. It's a business model built around creating dependency. It relies on farmers having to buy patented seeds every single year, plus all the specific chemicals designed to make only those seeds grow.
So here's the crucial point. Chufa's greatest strengths, the fact that it's self-sufficient, that it's resilient, that it grows for free, are direct threats to the entire industrial profit model. A plant that you don't have to buy every year is, by definition, a competitor to that whole system.
And here's the proof that there was a war against it. This wasn't passive. It was an active campaign with a dedicated chemical arsenal. I mean, companies have engineered and sold a whole suite of poisons specifically to kill chufa in the fields. That's a serious investment in suppression, not cultivation. And this right here, this is the bottom line. This is the simple, undeniable economic reason for everything. Chufa has been around for thousands of years. It's in the public domain. You can't control it. You can't enforce a patent on it. And if you can't own it, you can't build a dependency model around it. End of story.
So this lays out that business cycle. The chufa just blows up. The model is sell the seeds, sell the herbicides, sell the fertilizers, and make sure the farmer has to come back next year and buy it all again. Chufa breaks every single link in that very profitable chain, so it had to be reframed as the enemy. So, where does that leave this asset today?
Well, the current market is a clear battleground. It's a tug-of-war between natural resilience and an established profit model.
You know, what the industry calls invasive, a systems analyst would just call successful or robust. A plant that thrives without our help, that outcompetes others, and that comes back on its own, that's a model of pure efficiency. Calling it a bad name is a deliberate choice to protect a less resilient, but more profitable system.
This chart really visualizes that tension perfectly. Traditional use in places like Spain and Africa is still high. You've got this growing niche market revival, driven by people who are health conscious. But then you have this massive opposing force of industrial suppression, which is still very, very high.
But despite all that, you can't keep a good plant down. Knowledge is coming back. You can find it in health food stores now as tiger nuts. It's being rediscovered by communities looking for healthy, allergen-free options. People are even looking into it for biofuels and alternative flours. These are all signs that its inherent value is starting to win out again. But, and this is the critical takeaway for right now, the establishment hasn't budged. The major agricultural universities, the government agencies, they're still publishing papers on how to kill chufa, not how to grow it to feed people. The profitable story of weed is still the one that dominates the official conversation.
And all of this leaves us with a final, really fundamental question to think about. The case of chufa forces us to ask what value really means in our food system. Is it about nutrition, resilience, and sustainability? Or is it about patent rights and generating repeat business? The 16,000-year history of this plant gives one answer, but the last 100 years of agriculture gives a very, very different one.